Okay, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. So this chapter is about public goods, which is from chapter 6 of Holt and Davis. So there's pure public goods. Pure public goods have two properties. One is that it is non-rival, which means that two people can benefit from it at the same time, and my taking something does not take away from your enjoyment of the same thing. So like sunshine and TV broadcasts, my consuming some good does not prevent the other. So this is any rivalry is when I take something, then you cannot have it. And excludability means that I cannot prevent others from enjoying the benefits. So like defense is something the whole country enjoys, and you cannot prevent somebody from being defended when the country is being defended. So non-excludable. So there's pure private goods. Pure private are both rival, that is, if I take it, you cannot have it, and they are also excludable, that when somebody takes it, the other person is prevented from taking it. Honeybees have a lot of externalities, but they are excludable. You can build fences and prevent them from getting in, from getting out. So it's possible to exclude. So these are the properties. So pure public goods are both non-rival and non-excludable. Pure private goods are rival and excludable, and then there are middle properties, and some of these things are not so clear, I mean, in terms of their application. But only for the sake of clarifying intuition, we consider these two polar cases. This doesn't mean that these are the only two cases, and there is lots of ambiguity and confusion possible in the middle. So now the standard economic analysis is that if you have public goods, then everybody contributes and everybody benefits. However, failure of any one person to contribute doesn't have any noticeable effect. Like in the last round, if you have one example is voting. Any one person, if he votes or if he doesn't vote, it will not have any effect on the election. The chances are low. But if everybody decides, okay, and everybody has to invest a lot of effort for doing something that will not have any effect. So if everybody decides, okay, let the nation decide, I will sit at home and watch TV, then the election outcome could be changed. In fact, that's what happened in the election between the last one between Trump and Hillary Clinton. Yes, I was thinking Clinton. I said Clinton means somebody else. Yes, Trump versus Clinton. So people didn't like either of the two candidates. They said, okay, we'll just stay at home. If actually everybody had voted, then very likely Clinton would have won. But because of voter being disgusted with both of them, they stayed home, and as a result, Trump won. So failure of any one person, or if you have a large group, 50 people, one person, if he contributes or not, it will make no difference. So pollution is a very important example. Everybody drives a car, and this is so important that it's destroying the planet, the pollution. But for any one person to not drive will have no impact on the overall. So for one person, the benefit he gets from driving is huge, and the harm that he does to society is small. But if you put all of them together, then they are doing massive amount of collective damage. So how can you make everybody reduce driving? It's a very difficult job. So that's the public free riding problem, that As long as everybody else is doing something, then for one person to add to the effort doesn't make any difference. But if everybody reduces effort, it makes a big difference. There is this story about how some villagers had to. There was a big party. In the olden times, in the weddings, the whole village would come to another village to for the wedding. So the village chief said that okay, we have to gather a lot of milk. So there is this big jar, and everybody should put in 1 jug of milk, and then there will be enough for everybody, for the guests. So everybody went in and put in a jug of milk in the morning. They said, okay, we'll do it in the evening. In the morning they saw that it was all full of water because everybody decided as long as the rest of the village is going to put in milk, 1 glass of milk, 1 jug of water will not have any effect. So this is the free rider problem. So the issue is one that basically the Ledyard tax is the standard solution which has been proposed, and the solution is very easy. If the public good gives different levels of benefits to different people, so if everybody pays how much they benefit from the public good, then you can get the correct amount of provisioning. Everybody should pay in proportion to what they benefit. So if everybody pays according to this rule, this gives you an optimal provision of public good. But the key problem is, will people reveal their preferences? So if you say, okay, I will try to say that I don't get any benefit from this, so I should not be taxed, even though people derive benefit. This is called free riding. So what will actually happen? Some people have said that people will reveal preferences, and economists say that nobody will reveal preferences. The truth is somewhere in the middle. In some cases, like when you have public highways, then you can actually monitor the use, how much benefit everybody is getting. But if you take measures like controlling pollution, then it's hard to, everybody gets benefit. Some people benefit more, some people benefit less. But it's hard to say, and people will not reveal their preference. So the experiments and the literature had a lot of controversy about free riding. People do a lot of charitable donations in the billions, so it means that they are not acting selfishly. A lot of people have a lot of public spirit. They go and do many things which don't bring them any benefit and do things for public welfare. So the socialists say that there will be no free riding. Everybody will honestly contribute to social welfare. And economists say that there will be full free riding. Everybody will contribute 0. So one way to find out is to try experiments to see what happens. So one experiment, which is the one that we just ran, is called the voluntary contribution mechanism. So the example is that 4 partners contribute to the company. Every contributor gets 1/4 of the profits, and you can make any contribution in any amount up to a certain amount. So this is the game that we just played. Suppose that everybody contributes 1,000, the total investment is 4,000, it doubles to 8,000, equally shared by all, everyone gets 2,000. Case B is everybody keeps 1,000, then there is no profits, everybody gets what they started with. And now case C is if 3 people contribute 1,000, everything, and so the total is 3,000, it gets doubled to 6,000, divided by 4, every contributor gets 1,500. The one who did not contribute gets 1,000 plus 1,500, 2,500. So this is the paradox, the social dilemma, that everybody benefits from contributing, but one person can benefit more by not contributing. Although again, the social benefit is different from the individual benefit. So the basic issue is that the marginal private benefit is different from the marginal social benefit. This is the key, and this is what invisible hand says, that the private benefit equals the social benefit. In situations where private benefit or social benefit is the same, that is exactly what invisible hand means, that if everybody just acts for privately, this will be best for socially. But there are many, many situations where this is not true. The prisoner's dilemma, and this is also a kind of, this is public good problem, this VCM, the voluntary contribution mechanism. So, suppose we have this game where there are 4 players. So if I contribute $1, it will get doubled, become $2, and then it will be divided among 4 people. So I will get 50 cents. So actually, when I put in $1, I lose 50 cents. My marginal private benefit is 0.5. I get half of what I put in if I do my own. Now, everybody has exactly this marginal calculation. Everybody gets half of what they put in, but they also get half of what everybody else puts in. So now the marginal social benefit is 2 times the contribution. Society gets $2 for every dollar that I contribute. So the marginal social benefit is 200%. The marginal private benefit is 50%. And so that's why this is called the social dilemma. So the prisoner's dilemma is that the private gain is maximized by giving 0 contribution, and this is regardless of what other people contribute. If everybody contributes everything, you still make the maximum by not contributing anything, and if everybody contributes nothing, you still get the maximum. Yani your private, this is called the dominant strategy. The dominant strategy for every person is to contribute 0. So according to the economist prediction, everybody should always contribute 0, because if you if you maximize your benefits, your maximum is always 0 contribution. Social gains is maximized by 100% contribution. This is overall best for society, and paradoxically, it is also overall best for every individual. It also gives maximum, so the maximum gain to anybody. So this is the social benefit is conflict with private benefit, and this is the model which economists do not use. And economists talk about the invisible hand, but this is the more standard situation, where this is the anti-invisible hand. If everybody maximizes their selfish benefit, it will be harmful to the whole society, it will be harmful to the individual himself. So selfish behavior pays only because everybody else is being generous. So a few selfish people can survive in a generous society. Otherwise, the whole society will be hurt, and the person himself will be hurt. This is the typical paradigm which should be at the center of economics textbooks, but it is not. So when people started doing the experiments, there was a large range of results. So one set of results found that, Marvell and Ames, that general public contributes about 40 to 60%. Not 100% like the completely social selfless solution, and not 0% like the economist solution. But he ran the exam. These are people ran experiment among economists, and economists also contributed 20%. So they wrote a paper saying, economists free ride, does anyone else? And economists are the only ones who free ride. Actually, even the economists are not fully free riding. 20% is not 0, but they do much less because the economic theory influences them. But others, Kim and Walker, Isaac McHugh, they created games in which eventually everybody started free riding. So actually Plot especially, he is always trying to get the results which match the economic theory. So it turns out that by changing the conditions a little bit, you can get a lot of change. Like Umar Kyani was saying, that is this a hospital we are building or is this a business? So depending, so the book, there's an article by Ledyard that we will cover on this. So here it has a section which is, are people selfish or are they generous? Because the results are so much in conflict. So this is a wrong question which is being asked by economists. Because people are not selfish or generous like that. Everybody has tendencies for selfishness and everybody has tendency for generosity. It depends on the context. In fact, one of the main findings of the literature is that people act differently in social circumstances and in market circumstances. So in market situations where there's buying and selling going on, people maximize, and in social circumstances they act in a different way. And the standard example is the blood donation, where if we ask people to pay people money to buy their blood, nobody will sell. But if we ask them to contribute, people will. So it goes the reverse of what the economists thought then. And in fact, when economists were told about this, they said they were surprised, because they said, okay, yes, people have social motivation, so that will add, and you on top of that you get money, so this will add to your. But actually, these two, social and market motivations, are in conflict with each other. If you have one, then you don't have the other. So one of them drives out the other. So sometimes, if you try to pay people for their work, they will do less, because it removes the social motivation. There's a famous example that there was this daycare center, and the parents were supposed to pick up the children at 3 o'clock, but sometimes they would come late, and that would cause problems because you have to take care of the child. So they said, okay, what we do is we put a penalty for those who come late. So we will charge them $10 an hour. Now, the number of people who came late started increasing, because they said, okay, now we are paying for child care, so now I can relax and I can have my coffee. Otherwise, there was social response. Somebody is holding my baby and then they're taking care of her free, so I should go. But now when I'm paying for this service, so okay. So this is the thing, that the social motivation is different from the market motivation. So to ask the question, are people selfish or generous? This is not correct question. Everybody can be generous in the right circumstance, and everybody will be selfish in the different circumstance. So these are the results from 8 sessions, just like the ones that we ran. And what they were trying to do is to assess what makes people contribute more and what makes people contribute less. And this is exactly what I was trying to do. And we played games in which we got maximum contribution, and we played games in which we got less contribution. We didn't, actually I would have wanted to drive it to 0, and it's possible to do, but it would have taken more time and more tricks. So these are 8 different sessions with different types of conditions. So what they did was they changed the group size from 4 to 10. So what do you think what will happen? I mean, will there be, consider the 2 black lines. One of them is dark black, is near 0 contributions, and one of them is very high. So if you were to guess, if one of these is for group 4 and one of these for group 10, then which one would be for the group 10? Would the group 10 be contributing more, or would they be contributing less? Large groups में average contribution high होगा कि low होगा? अपना देख लेते हैं. सही. 6 में क्या हुआ? You think that the increasing group size would lower the contribution? Alright. What about the marginal private benefit? You see now, the marginal private benefit is what you get. So it's actually two things, Yani. How much your marginal private benefit in a group of size 3 was that you contribute $1, it becomes doubled to $2, then you get 1/3. So it's 2/3. 0.66 is your marginal private benefit. In a group of size 6, marginal profit is much less. It's marginal private benefit. You put in $1, it gets doubled. It gets divided by 6. So 2 divided by 6, your marginal profit is 33%. So marginal private benefit, if it is increasing, then actually the contribution increases. That's standard. And if what you get back on your own money is more, then you tend to contribute more. Now, the important thing to note here is that this is not according to economic theory, this is according to psychology. According to economic theory, whenever the marginal private benefit is less than 1, you should contribute 0. Because you are putting in $1, you're getting less than $1. So, whether the marginal private benefit is 99% or whether it's 1%, it makes no difference according to theory. But according to human psychology, this is not true. There's also the effect of experience. What will happen if players are experienced? Will they contribute more or will they contribute less? What do you think?
So in large group or small group?
We just consider experience. And if a player has played a lot of games and now we put him into a new public goods game, will he contribute more or will he contribute less than somebody who's new and doesn't understand how the game works? Alright, now let's see the answers. This is the data. This is the same for the graphs. So overall contribution was around 42% if you look at the first line. And there are two major trends, that overall contribution started at 50% and declined slowly over the period. This is combining all the experiments over all the conditions. So starts around 50%, goes to 37%, declines slowly. Now if you look at the next two lines, they have marginal private benefit of 0.3 versus 0.75. You can see that there is a big effect. If the marginal private benefit is 0.3, then the contributions are low. When you raise the marginal private benefit, then the contributions become much higher. And on the average, it's 26% to 58%. So when the marginal profit doubled, then the average contribution size also doubled. But also you see the same pattern that there is a decline. However, the decline is strong in m equals 0.3, but not so strong in m equals 0.75. So that goes according to intuition. Now what about experience? Well, in experience, 53, 53, 45, 50, 55. Experience shows somewhat lesser. So experienced players contribute less. This is what this table shows. However, this varies according to condition. But basically, in typical conditions where you have no social motivations, if people are looking only at private benefits, then experience will teach them that it is not worthwhile to contribute any. If you don't do the calculations properly, you can say that, oh, everybody is contributing high and everybody is getting a good return. But you have to learn that if you betray the people, you get even more. So that's not necessarily. With experience, you learn that, yes, betrayal is a dominant strategy. So this is what this table shows. What about the group size? The group size doesn't seem to have much effect here. Slightly bigger contribution in bigger group size, but otherwise generally the same. So the major finding is that experience and repetition leads to decline in contributions. This is an overall finding, but this also requires some thought. So you see, this is one major issue, that the experiment only reveals observed behavior, but to understand something you have to go deeper, you have to look at the reasons for that behavior. And those are never available directly from observations. So we find that contributions decline. That's the observation. Now why does this happen? So one of the things is that the reason that I just mentioned, that you learn that betrayal is a dominant strategy by occasionally trying different strategies and seeing that what you do, and as long as the group is acting in some way, if you are betraying them, and you actually get more. So another reason why it might decline is that people play strategically. They realize that if you have a multi-period game, if we cooperate in the first period, everybody will benefit, and it's only towards the end. You see, if you start by betraying, then the whole period everybody will betray, and then nobody will get anything. So it pays to betray in the last round, just the standard backward induction, because in the last round there is nothing further that you can have. In the initial round, if you cooperate, you will build trust, and that will help everybody, including yourself. But in the last round, trust is no longer relevant, so you should betray. And then there is this backward induction strategy, that once you realize that everybody is going to betray on the last round, then you say, okay, I'll betray on the 9th round. And then, so this is called unraveling. But it means that if this game is played multiple times, then people say, now the person who is playing the first time, he will not understand that you have to betray on the last round, except for a few. But now the person who has experience with one game, he will say, the last round is definitely betrayal, but previous round we should build trust. And then if you have more and more experience, you will go backwards more and more periods and realize that. So this is called strategic behavior. The third reasoning is even more complex and depends even more on psychology. Basically, human beings have a strong incentive to punish bad behavior and less incentive to reward good behavior. So suppose there you have a very cooperative group, suddenly one person betrays. So people get annoyed, they say, why did he betray? I'll also betray. So then there are two people betray, and then other people say, two people are betraying. So this cooperation unravels, breaks down. So this is a possible reason. So to understand and disentangle these reasons requires more work, which simply the observations that do not do. There are some experiments which show that the third reason is the most likely one, because what happens is that if you you start by this cooperation, and then it goes down, but in new group, people start again with high levels. So it is not the first reason, that learning not contributing leads. It can be building up trust strategy, or it can be that you get disenchanted. You start out with high hopes that we will all be cooperative, but then you see that people are behaving like human beings, and then you start distrusting them. So there's this experiment by Andreoni about this trust business. So he played two types of treatments, and this is the average over two different groups. One was where you had two people play, and they were partners, and they were paired throughout the 10 games, so that there could be trust building. And then the other game was that the people were strangers, and they were changed every round. So in this particular game, in this particular experiment, on every round, the average contribution between the partners was less, and the average contribution with strangers was higher. So this refutes the idea that you're trying to build trust, and so strategic play. So why? Well, basically the author, and here Holt and Davis, say that within the set of motivations that we're looking at, we don't have a solution to this. We should look at more things like revenge and reciprocity and generosity and altruism. There's the soft glow motivation that people get feel good when they do something good. So you can't understand human behavior by just looking at maximization. So what we are trying to do is to find out when people, we understand basically from the first set of experiments that there is a large difference in the range of behaviors. Sometimes you get a lot of cooperation and sometimes you don't get cooperation. So what is it that leads to this difference? What are the factors that lead to cooperation and what are the factors that lead to non-cooperation? So one of the factors is experience. So if you look at the first graph, where with inexperienced players, you got the standard decline, but with the experienced players, they started out contributing less, and they ended up with zeros mostly. So overall, it seems that inexperienced players contribute more. So the first is small group size and small marginal private benefit. The second one is large group size and large marginal private benefit. So in the second one, you see that the contributions have gone up. So both for experience and for inexperience. And overall, it does seem that experience leads you to contribute a little bit less, but not that much different. And all of the factors, the marginal private contribution ratio is what he uses, what I call marginal private benefit. And so this is the effect of group size seems to be positive. If you have more members, you add, and experience effect is negative. This is another of the same kind of thing, another experiment where in the first chart on the left hand side you have two conditions. You have groups of 4 and groups of 10, and then you have low marginal private benefit. Actually, I think it's the same chart as the previous one. L is low, which means 0.3 with group size of 4, and 10L means group size of 10 and marginal private benefit of 0.3. And then with high, it is marginal private benefit is 0.75. So you can see that the marginal private benefit makes a clear difference. When you have higher marginal private benefit, you get more contributions. Also, group size, the 10L is higher than 4L, but 10H and 4H are roughly speaking matched, so there doesn't seem to be that much difference. So it's not clear what the group size effect is. But when you go to 40 group size, which is on the right hand side, then they tried 40 with L, and now you get, even with low private benefit, you get fairly stable contributions around 60%, 55%, and it doesn't seem to be going down to zero at all. But when you have 40 with very low marginal private benefit, then the contribution goes to zero.
Sir, are these with experienced players or inexperienced
These are, I think, with inexperienced players, with the group size of 40. But I think we will see that later. So, what is the explanation for these results now? There is a question. Why does this come out like this? So, there is an interesting explanation which is called the minimum profitable coalition size. If the marginal private benefit is 0.3, then 4 people must contribute for benefits, because basically, however, you get marginal private benefit of 0.3 for yourself and then for anybody else who contributes. So you get free money from them. So if there are 4 people who contribute, then your total benefit is 4 times 0.3, which is 1.2. So in a group size of 4, the social benefit, your benefit becomes 1.2. So if you have a group size of 4, then and your marginal private benefit is 0.3, then you need 100% cooperation. If one person does not cooperate, then you don't get any benefit. And your total benefit is 3. What we are talking about is 3 people cooperate means 3 people put in everything, and 1 person doesn't put in anything. So then you have 3 times 0.3, you will get 0.9 of what you get paid in, but you will lose money. So you have to have 100% cooperation. If 3 people put in everything, it's not enough. Everyone must have some social spirit in order to get return. But if you have a group size of 40, only 10% of the people need to put in everything, and you will still make gains. So in large group sizes, the amount of generosity needed is less, and so you can afford to put in money, and you can be safe. Even though people are betraying, you will still make money. So now if you have now the data from experiments matches this hypothesis that it's the minimum profitable coalition size which people look at. You see, if you look at the 40 group with very low, MPCR was 0.03. So then the coalition size required was 85%. If 85% people put in everything, then you will benefit. So people didn't count on others to be that cooperative, and so everybody started reducing. But if you have 0.3, then only 4 people need to cooperate. So everybody generously put in a lot, and then they got a lot. So this was self-reinforcing behavior. So people continued to cooperate, even though individually their incentive was not to cooperate. So this also explains, if you look at the 4 people with low MPB, all 4 are required to cooperate in order to participate, and you see that the contribution went to 0. With the 10 people and low, it still went towards 0, but here the minimum coalition size was larger, cooperation was maintained for longer. But with 4 people with high MPC, now not all people, only 2 people need to cooperate. 0.75 means that if you have 2 people who are participating fully, then even if other 2 people don't do anything, you will still make gains. So now cooperation was high and it remained at a high level. And similarly with 10 high, again it remained at a high level. So if you look at the minimum coalition size, then that seems to explain these results. So here's the analysis of the graphed experiment. So with the incentive of 0.3, which is the L condition, and group size of 4, 10 and 40, the marginal social benefit is 1.2. This is the situation where, you see, suppose you have a group size of 4, everybody invests, you get 20% profit. I was giving 100% profit. So if you get 20% profit, then $1 will become $1.20, and it will be divided among 4 people, so your private benefit will be 30 cents to the dollar. But if everybody contributes, you make 20% profits. So what is the minimum profitable coalition? In this case, everybody needs to contribute. Otherwise, with 20% you will lose. You can get, if only 3 people contribute fully, you get 90%. So marginal social benefit is 1.2. Now if you have group size of 10, then you have 3.0 is the social benefit in this group. And so you need only about 4 people to contribute to get a profit, and that's only 40% of the group. And with 40 people, you need 10% of the people to contribute to make a profit. And with the very low incentive, and with n equals 40, you need 85% of the coalition to profit, and again, contributions go to 0. So there is a huge difference between what the experimental results show and what the economic theory says. Economic theory says that whenever the marginal private benefit is less than 1, you should not contribute anything. This doesn't happen. Contributions are responsive to marginal private benefit. And economic theory says the group size doesn't matter because your incentives are determined. And experience and experiments show that it matters a lot. So basically the conclusion is like what we said, the victims of game theory, Ariel Rubinstein, and game theory blinds you to the reality of human behavior. So now the question is, and the key reason we are studying these public games is how can we get people to contribute to the public good, because there is an externality problem that needs to be solved. The free rider is a social problem. So there are these 2 interventions that the textbook discusses. One is communication, allow people to talk, and the other is the provision points, which we did. We did not allow communication. So now again, according to economic theory, there's something which is called cheap talk, that you can talk to each other. You're not allowed to make any commitments, you're not allowed to make any threats, or you're not allowed to even reveal your endowment, or you're not even allowed to say what you're going to do, but you can say general things that let us cooperate. Yes, that's so this is called cheap talk in economics, that since there is no money involved and there is no promise, no trust, then it will not matter according to economic theory. But according to the reality of human behavior, it matters a lot. So here is the experiment. In the C means communication was allowed under these conditions that I have discussed, that there is no talking about endowments, no commitments, no threats, and no specific discussion of this is what we are going to do. Nonetheless, according to theory, according to economic theory, cheap talk should not matter, but it did. There were 3 experiments plotted here. One, in 10 periods you allowed communication in the first 2 periods, and then no communication in the last 10, and in one you had no communication in the first 10 periods and then communication in the second 10. So if you look at the top line, that's when communication occurred in the first 10 periods. There was another reason for the difference. We'll discuss that later. So in the first line, with symmetric endowments, everybody has the same thing. Then cooperation was achieved by the 8th round, by the 7th round, and then there was full cooperation on 7, 8, 9 and 10. We also had similar results here, but we didn't have communication, we had provisioning. Then in the 11th round, people were allowed to, the communication was prevented. But still, because they had achieved full cooperation, they kept cooperating until about the 8th round. And then in 9th, 8, 9 and 10, there was some betrayals as the game got towards the end and you had this end strategy effects. The second group was also like the first one. There was communication, but there was a difference that people had different amounts of money. Now, in this game that we played, everybody had 10 units, but suppose some people have more and some people have less. You can contribute, but now because the amount that is being given at the end is equal for all, so the persons who have more are in a dilemma that we can say that, okay, everybody should contribute everything, or that everybody should contribute 80%. So that has a very different meaning. So, or everybody should contribute the same amount. So what is the meaning of exactly equal contribution is no longer clear. Is it everybody should contribute the same amount, or is it everybody should contribute the same percentage of their endowment? So this, because of this, communication did not work as effectively, but it was much better than the case of no communication. So after, in the case of asymmetric endowments, after the communication was blocked, then the cooperation went down quite a lot, but then still it remained above 25%, so it's not that you're going to zero. Economic theory has nothing to do with any of these results. So the non-cooperation factor, so one of the important non-cooperation factors is asymmetry that we learned from this experiment. If different people have different amounts, then it's difficult for people to agree on what is the fair contribution for everybody. Because the person who has the large amount, he will make more money by, he'll say, okay, I'll match everything that you put up, that's fine. And then he will retain his own contribution, which is his private, and he will maximize his benefit. So that's fair to him. But people will say that no, since you have more, let us all contribute 50% of what we have. So that will be fair to them but unfair to him. So it's hard to decide, hard to agree on what is fair. Then if there is no communication, is just cheap talk. If you cannot see what other people are doing, then it's hard to decide if people lived up to their agreement. So communication led to about 80% contribution, which is much more than no communication, but much less than 100% cooperation, which was achieved in the symmetric case. There was also a history effect that I want to mention, that see, if you look at the non-cooperative group, they went to zero in the first 10 periods, no communication group. When they started communication, then they started at 60% and then they slowly went up to 100%. If you look at the same group, when you started with communication, then they started at 100% and they deviated a little bit. People were trying to cheat a little bit, but they eventually, but now when the communication was established, then in the second period, no communication, they started again at 100%. So there is an effect of history. If this group had started at NC, they wouldn't have started out at 100%, they would have started more near 60%. In fact, we also saw that with no communication, no history, you start at 50%. But once you achieve full cooperation, then you are likely to maintain it because everybody benefits from it. So now what he's saying here is that the history effect was weaker in the asymmetric case, because even though something was happening, but in the asymmetric case, after the communication breaks down, then everybody has to think on their own. There is no parity. How should I behave? Your behavior doesn't, other people's behavior doesn't constrain you because you're not in the same position. So the history effect was weaker. Cooperation broke down very quickly, unlike the symmetric case where the cooperation remained in effect for a long time. This is another experiment for a non-cooperative factor. In this is a situation where, as the amount of investment increases, the return becomes less. So, if you have, in our cases, in each experiment, no matter how much money you put in, it gets doubled. But in this experiment, they said, okay, if you put in 100, it will get doubled. If you put in 200, it will get multiplied by 1.5. If you put in 300, you will get 20% return. So return was always increasing, but the rate of return was decreasing. So in that case, again, now the marginal private benefit changes and it declines as you contribute more and more. So I think they set it up so that the optimal was for you to contribute 1/2. So in this situation, again, communication led to 100% cooperation in the initial period, but cooperation declined in 6 persons. And with no communication, it started out low and it also declined. So all this does, declining MPB, is it makes it more difficult to understand what fair contribution should be. And so the negotiation becomes more difficult. And especially the kind of communication we are allowing, which you can't talk about numbers. If you could talk about numbers, possibly people would agree, okay, this is what we should do, and then if there is an agreement, then people would honor it. So basically, then we come to the crunch. What does this mean for the public goods? Can we solve the problem by using communications? So the problem is, this is not probably not a good solution, because only in small groups can you meet and communicate. When you have big groups and these things happen, like you have a situation that a big company is coming into the town and they're going to cause pollution. So can we all communicate? So you have a town meeting, so it becomes difficult, and then everybody has something else to say. So it's very hard to come to agreement. So when you have large groups, then it's costly to meet, it's costly to agree, and there are lots of asymmetries. So communication is not going to be the solution to the public good problem, even though in small groups it can be a very powerful solution. So the second methodology, which might work in large groups, is called the provision points, which is what we have said, which we have made an experiment. So here, consider a VCM, voluntary contribution mechanism, with 2 players. Both people have 10 points. If they both pool, and so you get 20 in the pool, and suppose that you have 1.5, you have 50% return on the social. So that means that the $20 will become $30, and so each person gets $15 back. So now one way to say is that pooled money gets multiplied only if both contribute fully, otherwise zero payoff. So this is a very high risk situation. Everybody has to put in everything, and you have to rely on the other person to pool everything, otherwise both parties will get zero. So this is high risk. Now if you look at the Nash equilibrium analysis, which the economists like to do, then this does create another Nash equilibrium. If both people contribute 10, this is a Nash equilibrium, because anybody who changes that will lose money. Because if you both put in 10, both get 15. Now if you put in any amount other than that, you will get 0. If you put in 0, you will get $10, but $10 is still less than 15, yes. So it is a Nash equilibrium, but in experiments this did not work very well. You found that there was lots of non-cooperation and it decreased to 0 because people could not trust the other party with no communication, and typically with strangers. So then they tried another version of the provision point, and this is provision point with no risk. So you contribute, if the minimum is achieved, then you get the doubling, otherwise you just get your money back. So this is also a case that you contribute to the cause. If we have enough money to build the hospital, we will build the hospital, otherwise you will just get your money back. So this is a possible case. Like AD works like that. They say, okay, you donate, and if you are not satisfied, you can get your money back. So this one did work, unlike the previous one. With the provision point with high risk, that didn't work. You got lots of non-cooperation and declining to 0 cooperation. But here, people tried a little bit of contribution, doesn't work. So in the first 3, they didn't reach the maximum, but eventually they realized that, okay, if everybody contributes full, then everybody, because you got back everything. So, but you just got back, and everybody had only what they started with. There's no profits. So when they managed to achieve cooperation, people tested and tried to put more and more, and eventually after the 3rd round they got full cooperation and they remained in full cooperation. So this provision point with payback, with the give money back, works well to create social cooperation. So the summary is that if you have provision points plus give back, then this does work, but you have problems arise with this when you don't have symmetry. Different people have different amounts to contribute. So suppose, for example, that both people have 10 and provision point is 13. That means that you have to have 13 in order to. So one must give 7, the other person must give 6 to reach the minimum. So this can cause problems. But even bigger problems arise if one person has 15 and the other person has 10. Then it's not clear how. There are many different combinations, many different ways to reach the provision point, and everybody wants that the other peer. And this is actually exactly what is happening in the climate change problem. That overall everybody knows that this is the amount of carbon that should be released if we want to have a safe plan. So now everybody has to cut back, but now everybody says that let other people do the maximum amount of cutting and I will do the minimum amount of cutting, and then there can be no agreement. So there's the Kyoto Protocol which came to an agreement, but it was a voluntary agreement and nobody followed it actually. So communications can break down and fail to reach agreement, and this is exactly what happens in the climate change. Either communications break down, nobody can agree on the level. So it's not that everybody knows what needs to be done, where the provision point is, but how much everyone must contribute. There is a big controversy there. Okay, you should give more because you are the bigger party, and so on. So there is no agreement. Alright, so I'll finish by this. There is this Ledyard Survey of the different factors that have been studied in this game. So there is MPCR, marginal per capita return, and that is known to be significant and important in terms of increasing provisioning. So plus means that this is important, and 3.3 is the section number in the Ledyard Survey in which this issue is discussed, which is on the website actually. So if you have group size, that is the number of the group. It is unknown the exact effect, and basically it interacts with other factors. So sometimes it can be positive, sometimes it can be negative, depending on other things. Repetition. This is a negative factor, known to be strong negative, 2 minuses. So as people repeat the game, then people's contribution tends to go down. This is again, this requires some thought. It might not be true. It depends on other factors. With other factors, it might be that repetition leads to full cooperation, and you can just stay at full cooperation. Common knowledge. So everybody knows what everybody else has, and that helps in cooperation. Gender has been tested. Do women contribute more? So there is no known effect. Homogeneity, symmetry, that helps in creating cooperation. Threshold, this is the provisioning, that a minimum level is required before you. That tends to help in creating cooperation. But single plus means that it's not so strong. Now these are the systemic factors. So beliefs about each other regarding trust, etc. These help. Economics training hurts. Experience hurts. Cooperation. Friendship and group identification helps. Learning, we don't know. Learning can have both types of effects, as we just discussed. You can learn to cooperate, or you can learn to.
Sir, but in experience, like such as हमने किया था hospital में, it will help, sir.
Well, you see, in markets it can.
Yes, in market won't, but like in.
So, learning can lead to learning to cooperate or learning to betray. So that's why it's a zero factor, and you don't know how it works. Altruism and fairness, how do they work? We don't know. I mean, the question mark says that. Effort, how much effort do you have to put in to reach an agreement? This is something that has to do with, to call a meeting for communication, how hard it is to work out. Again, there's a question mark. We don't know how that works. Risk aversion, this is also unknown. Yani this is, again, in some situations you have to trust other people. So if you are risk averse, then you might not trust. So again, the effects are not known. Design variables, communication helps a lot. Rebates, I don't know what that is. I think it's just like returning you're paying back your contribution. It helps. Unanimity, if you ask that people should agree in order to come to agreement, so that doesn't help because the unanimity is hard to reach. Moral suasion, can I actually you should be human beings, insan bano, cooperate with each other. Will that help? Well, I tried it. It didn't seem to change. It changed behavior of some people. It didn't change the behavior. Other people got date hote hain. Sab kuch kehte raho. So again, there's a question mark. We don't know how well it works. Alright, so that's the end of the lecture. Now, actually, Monday there will be no lecture because I'm going to go to Peshawar for a lecture. So there is one thing that I would like you to do.